Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Just to carry on in terms of what Honorable Brian Wilford was mentioning, I think having a steady hand is really important. Having a long-term view is very important. Obviously, as part of Canada, there's a lot of issues. And I think really we have to look at global relationships with steady hand in order to make sure that we collectively come out of this in terms of COVID, but more importantly, making sure that we are creating platform and pathway for future generations. As Julie mentioned, my name is Sophia Leong. I'm coming to you from Ottawa. Selamat Hari to my friends in Malaysia and Indonesia. I just want to share that I was born in Malaysia. I'm a proud Malaysian emotionally and have been away for far too long. So hopefully we, in terms of making sure that we can travel going forward. Today, I really want to focus in the next 9 minutes why Vietnam matters, not just in terms of Canada, but actually to the world. And I think one of the things that we really have to focus on in the context of today's conversation is Vietnam and Canada, we've been really good friends since 1973. And really looking forward to really strengthening the relationship. So the way that for the next 8 minutes or so, going to give you visibility in terms of the context of why Vietnam matters. And I position it in the context of Asia, and also at the same time to really highlight key economic components that we need to be aware of. So this, for the next 8 minutes, is not meant to be comprehensive, but really is to focus on the key elements that we really need to really look at in order to drive policies and also key relationships and behaviors. As Julie mentioned very eloquently, a little bit about me. My day job is University of Ottawa at this point in time. And I'm the Executive Advisor in Development and Internationalization. And previous to that, led the Executive MBA program. And I think as proud Canadians, sometimes we have to really sing what we've done. So within University of Ottawa, we were ranked Global Executive MBA program #1 in the world 2 years in a row. So we're extremely proud of that. But a little bit of your background in terms of why I think Vietnam is important. I'm a business person, I'm an entrepreneur. I cut my teeth at Nortel, incubated over 11 companies. And from there, I founded 3 companies and exited from 2. The other thing also is when I was leading the Executive MBA program, I led 2 trade delegations to Vietnam. Saw firsthand in terms of how incredible and compelling that economy is, but more importantly, the drive and the entrepreneurship spirit. So with that in mind, I really want to, for the next few minutes, contextualize it in terms of where Vietnam is in the position of Asia. I think this is something that is quite familiar with everyone. When we look at the economic data, when we look at evidence-based data in terms of trade and in terms of business consumer behaviors, there is a projection that the Asian century is here. I think one of the things that is very remarkable from a business end is, especially when we're still going through a global pandemic and a global event such as COVID-19, is Vietnam has shown incredible resiliency. And in fact, achieved the highest economic growth rate in 2020. It's prudent to show that they didn't even drop or contract even a quarter in 2020. And I think that is remarkable. And I think that really have a lot to say, or a lot is rest on the spirit of the Vietnamese population. And I think that's something that we need to acknowledge. The other thing also is when we look at in terms of why Vietnam matters to Canada and in fact to the world, is we need to be able to contextualize it within Asia. Again, when we're looking at the 5 points that I have in front of me, this is not comprehensive, but this is key. So share with you some of the facts and projections on Asia. Consumption, right? I think that's the drivers of a lot of business activities and a lot of policies is when you look at the overall Asia, they're going to occupy 50% of the global consumption by 2040, right? That's a $10 trillion opportunity that as Canadians, we shouldn't be missing. We should really be focusing. And that has an impact in terms of the policies that we're putting together. The PPP, you know, when it comes to global GDP and PPP, within Asia itself is going to be greater than 50%. So what does that mean? That means the shift of power, right? In a gradual shift of power. The other thing also is we've seen a lot of evidence to suggest that. And from my perspective, based on what I've seen from a data perspective, that shifting of the power is actually going to go faster. Why? Because the global pandemic actually offered a perfect opportunity for the acceleration. The other thing that I think, you know, in order to contextualize Asia and where Vietnam is when you look at the Asian population, they're expecting, 70% of them is expecting to be in the consuming class, which is really, really critical, right? Because that has an impact on the flow of trade. Corporate distribution, I think this is not a surprise for anyone that is participating in this particular forum, is Asia is here. Asia is a factor, right? Because Asian companies account for 43% now of the world's top 5,000 companies from a revenue perspective, and that is pretty impressive. The other driver that really is accelerating what is happening in Asia is Industry 4.0, right? When we're looking at a big convergence of consumer behaviors, you know, I think in a certain age group, we look at, you know, how do you measure wealth? Previously you measure wealth in terms of a house, a car, you know, the type of phones that you have, or the type of telecommunication channels that you have. Nowadays, because of business innovation and the digital platform, it's your smartphone. Everything is surrounding your platform within the smartphone, and it's very affordable. When I'm talking about affordability, I'm also talking about information. Previously, information is power because information is asymmetry, right? But now there's symmetry in information because of internet. Anybody can get a free education. Anybody can learn about anything, right? So Industry 4.0 really is blowing the doors and it's accelerating the rise of Asia. The women economic impact, I think that's really, really key. And that's something that I know from a policy perspective is very dear within our Canadian policymakers, is how do we increase the participation rate of women? Within Asia itself, the rise of women participation in the economy is actually impressive and is expected to rise, right? So especially when you look at 50% of the global women do not own the income. Asia is changing the tide, and Asia is really leading the way when it comes to the economic impact of women. The other thing also is the change of family structure. You know, women is progressively holding the purse, and that's really, really important. Now, how do we then translate now to in terms of Vietnam? I think it's important to acknowledge the fact that Vietnam is, you know, was the top performing economy in Asia in 2020. Again, looking at 6 key elements in terms of positioning in terms of Vietnam. Again, we cannot, minimize the economic growth. The forecast of a strong and stable economic growth for Vietnam, it was, 6 to 9% for the next decade. And we know recently it took a hit because of the supply chain issue. However, the supply chain issue is a global issue. It's not a Vietnam issue. So I think, there's a lot of buffer and balance from there. The other thing also is Vietnam has shown the last 10 to 15 years incredible stability when it comes to its economy and trade. And it's interesting because the way that Vietnam has always been positioned is, especially from business leaders, is part of the China Plus One impact, right? Which is actually good. It's co-branding, where co-branding is always good. So China Plus One has benefited Vietnam. But what has also transpired in the sea change in terms of politics is the temperature with China is pretty tough at this point in time. So the shift to Vietnam needs to be registered. Consumption power, Vietnam has, one of the fastest growing middle class, is actually ranked 7th globally, and is expected to double. What does that mean to Canadian business leaders? Consumers that can actually pay for our products and services. Specialization impact, I think, when we're looking at it for the last 10 to 15 years, it's important for us to acknowledge that the niche that Vietnam has created has positioned itself so well. Is really looking at manufacturing, logistics, IT, agriculture. Those are really, really key. And it's actually more highlighted during the pandemic, and that's where Vietnam could actually harvest going forward. The other thing also is important to acknowledge the strong international integration of Vietnam in the whole context of ASEAN, Asia, and also in the global marketplace. And it's because it has very friendly trade policies, and it's extremely good in terms of relationship. The strategic in terms of geopolitical, I think, is common knowledge now. I think all you have to do is look at the map. It now smack in One Belt, One Road strategy and has benefited, and that's why it's not surprising that China is Vietnam's largest trading partner. The convergence points, we talk about convergence of technology, and the other thing also is because of the positioning of Vietnam, there is a convergence of consumer demand and efficiency. And that you can see from a foreign direct investment perspective. There's 109 companies that is now functioning within the Vietnam economy. Obviously, China is really important. Japan called Vietnam the best FDI opportunity that they have. And Singapore is leading the way last year in terms of from a numbers perspective. The key thing is when you look at this is how connected Vietnam is in context of ASEAN and the context of Asia. Again, Industry 4.0. I think the fact that Vietnam has a very young, population really adds values and strength to Industry 4.0. And in fact, a recent study by Temasek and Google from Singapore called Vietnam the digital dragon being unleashed. And I think when you look at the growth in the tech sector, it is quite evident. I do want to talk about the digital natives and the digital to consumer business. Again, talking about affordability, talking about the young population of Vietnam. They're very entrepreneurial. I saw it firsthand when I was there leading 2 trade delegation. Entrepreneurship is all about wealth creation. And I think, Vietnam is well positioned for that. So why does it matter to us as Canadians? Vietnam offers a really big domestic market for Canadian businesses. Vietnam has incredible talent assets that we can actually leverage. The geopolitical strength. Vietnam is a good landing or launch pad for other markets for Canadians. We have a strong long-term friendship. I think it's strengthening over the years, and I hope that it will strengthen even more. We just have to get more business leaders that actually lives in Vietnam. Our culture, not just in terms of English culture, but French culture, right? And all of us, when you look at it in the context of Canada and Vietnam, we have our strength. Obviously, we have our issues, but we also have a lot of opportunities. And I'm going to wrap it up because I just want to make sure that we listen to the next speaker. So come on, and thank you very much. And looking forward to some questions at the end of this.